Okay, looks like we're all ready to go.
We are live and ready when you are, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. We'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is a regular meeting of the Seldovia City Council, Monday, January 23rd, 2023, time 6:05 p.m. And we'll go ahead and do roll call. Peyton? And I didn't hear that. I want to make sure we didn't have an audio issue.
Here.
Okay, now I got you. There we go. Okay. Let's see. Keith Lee is excused. Sweat.
Here.
Rojas.
Here.
Kennedy.
Here.
Swick.
Here.
Okay. We do have a quorum. 5 out of 6 are in attendance with 1 excuse tonight. And Heidi, if you can go ahead and lead us off in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, thank you. As we had said under item C, excused absences, we just have 1 tonight, and that is Keith Lee. Item D, agenda approval. We'll go ahead and look for a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion to approve tonight's agenda, I believe by Rojas, second by Peyton. Any further discussion on the agenda before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on tonight's agenda approval. All those in favor, Peyton?
Aye.
Sweat? Sweat, was that a yes? Sorry, I don't know if we're having audio problems here.
Aye.
Okay, Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved with a vote of 5-0, 1 absent. Item E, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are approved with a single motion, no discussion, and 1 vote. The council member may request to remove any item for discussion and a separate vote. Items removed from the consent agenda will be placed under new business. Tonight's consent agenda consists of item 1, approval of minutes from the special meeting, January 9th, 2023. That's found on page 5 of your packet. And the minutes of the regular meeting from January 9th, 2023. That's found on page 7 of your packet. No ordinance introductions on the consent agenda. There's 1 resolution, that's item 3A. That'll be resolution 23-28, resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, confirming the city manager's appointment of Jan Yeager and Layla Jant Peterson as acting city manager for the 2023 calendar year, depending on availability and circumstances. And that will be found on page 11 of your packet. Okay, has any member at this time wish to remove any specific item to discuss individually? Okay, hearing none, we will go ahead, look for a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
I'll make a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve tonight's consent agenda, second by Swick. Any further discussion on the consent agenda before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of tonight's consent agenda. All those in favor, Peyton?
Aye.
Sweat?
Aye.
Rojas?
Aye.
Kennedy?
Aye.
Swick?
Aye.
Okay, motion is approved, 5-0 with 1 absent. Item F, mayoral proclamations, none. Item G, public presentation prior notice, none. Item H, public presentation for items not on the agenda. Heidi, do we have anyone either in the audience or online that wishes to speak tonight?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Item I, committee and advisory board reports. Looks like we don't have any tonight. Item J, administrative reports. The first one will be the finance report, and that'll be found on page 12 of your packet.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yep, we got you, Jam.
Hi there. Sorry, you went through the agenda a little faster than I was anticipating, so I'm still pulling up documents here. So give me just a second.
Yeah, no worries.
Okay. So we've got kind of the usual format. As you can, if you've got the narrative report in front of you, you can see the AMLIP accounts. With the one at the top, 344,000 and change, that's the total. And then it's broken up into 4 smaller accounts that you can see down below. We are in the process of opening 2 additional accounts. One will be for the refuse vehicle replacement with the funds that the city council has identified for placing into there. It's approximately $15,000. And then the second account that we are in the process of opening will be for the 2% sales tax funds, so that we can have those segregated from the general fund. The Charles Schwab account being more affected by the vagaries of the stock market. It varies quite a bit, but currently we are up about $14,000 over the principal that was invested in that, so that's good progress. Moving down to the general fund. We're in terms of revenues, we're doing quite well for this point in the year. You can see that 84% of the projected revenues have been accrued. And the sales tax revenue, we are already at 98%. Of course, that is something that we do see accumulates more in the first half of the year. We don't see as much of that in the second half of the year as the winter returns come back and so on, but that's still a great number to be at in January. Real property tax similar at 94%. And then the personal property tax and motor vehicle tax lagging a little bit behind, but still pretty good targets for this time of the year. General fund expenditures overall, again, right about where we forecasted. We're at 54% of projected expenditures within the general or the different funds of the general fund. Some are a little bit above where we would like them to be, some are a little bit below. And you can see those in the details there, but generally doing fairly well. That general fund number, as you can see in that last note, that does still include the general or the 2% sales tax revenue. And so that is something that will be moved out. And so that will affect those numbers. And we're hoping to get that done here in the next 3 weeks. It's taken a little bit to calculate exactly what that 2% is. And what we've realized is we really can't say exactly what it is just because of the way sales tax comes to the borough. It's not as straightforward as we would wish. And so what we've talked about is just developing a policy and sticking with it. And so basically looking at May through October for the sales tax that comes directly from the borough, because that comes with about a month's delay. So May through October really kind of reflects the April through September time period that sales tax is collected. And then the remote sellers sales tax, because that takes another step, because it gets funneled through the AML. By the time we get it, it's generally about 2 months behind where it was collected. And so that's why we've looked at June through November for the remote sellers. But we did some calculations last week, and it looks like in the first year, between the remote sellers and the funds that go directly to the borough, we have collected approximately $70,000. And of course, we've also made the greater payment already, but it puts us in a good position, I think, to make sure that that greater payment is covered and then there'll hopefully be a little bit left over as well. So if this year is a forecast of coming years, I think we're going to be in good shape.
Just- If I may interject,
Mhm.
Mr. Mayor, I have a question before I forget
Yeah, go ahead, Vivian.
on this topic. Jan, if you could elaborate, I'm a little bit confused. I understand we're going to make up a new account for the 2% sales tax payments that we receive. But could you fill me in the remote seller's tax? Are we putting those two tax incomes together into an account? It seems to me like they should be separate. Or maybe you could fill us in or fill me in about how we're looking at that.
Okay, so the remote seller sales tax is also sales tax, and it's collected at the same rate as sales that happen directly in Seldovia. It changes season by season. And so for that reason, we are treating it the same as the sales tax we receive through the borough, in that we have targeted that additional 2% in the summertime to be moved into that special account to support the greater and public works.
Okay, okay, all right, that clears it up. Okay,
Mhm.
thank you.
So, yeah, the end of the note there, I say that the general fund revenue is currently overstated by $70,000, and that's because that additional sales tax is still in the general fund and needs to be moved out.
Right.
But-
Right, that 56,000 and that 14,000 roughly, that's the numbers you're talking about.
Yes, exactly, yeah. And so the
Mhm.
total is the $70,597. And so we've been in contact with KeyBank, which holds the AMLIP accounts, and that we are getting those accounts established. And as soon as they are established, we're going to move the funds from the Wells Fargo account that holds the general fund into the KeyBank account.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
Well, okay, thank you. Okay, so water and sewer special revenue funds. We did some refiguring with how we were allocating expenses, and we reallocated them a little bit more heavily toward water than to sewer. And the thinking behind that was because any given utility bill, approximately 70% of that utility bill is for water and only about 30% for sewer. And so we thought, well, we should probably allocate the expenses accordingly. And when we discussed that, I had not really looked at how much of the expenditure also is heavily weighted toward water. And so I think that's something that we're going to revisit, because you can see here, water special revenue fund expenditures are at 65% of budgeted, whereas sewer expenditures are only at about 38% of budget. And so I think we're going to be doing some reallocation of some expenses to try and balance those out a little bit. So this is the current status, and I apologize. You can see a note there saying September has not yet been billed. That should say January. So that is my mistake, not getting that out of there. Looking at the dock revenues at 103% of projected revenues. That's because we've had much more regular ferry service, and also because we drastically under budgeted our revenues on the dock. And so that's looking pretty good when you look at the numbers. However, if you look at the actual spreadsheet, you can see that just because of the way the budget was done, that the dock is still operating in a deficit, unfortunately. And actually, most of our revenue funds are at this point, because we didn't design a budget that had the revenues balancing the expenses. So that's something we're going to be looking at here in the next few weeks, as we look at our mid-year budget adjustment and so on. With Harbor and Jackaloff, or I'm sorry, not with Harbor Jackaloff and with boat haul out, especially with the harbor, you can see the revenues seem like they're lagging pretty far behind, since they're only at 28% of projected. However, I think, as you know, the bulk of the harbor revenue comes when we do the billing for annuals and so on at the end of February. And so we expect to see that catch up pretty well. And then boat haul out, again, that's an area where, with a lot of boats, staying still, we don't see a lot of activity this time of year, but when spring comes and more boats are being launched and so on, we'll see some revenue pick up. And that's also still an area where we are hoping to improve our collections procedures. The boat haul out, just by the nature of the work there, is a little more prone to needing collection than our other special revenue funds are. In terms of grant funding, the SMOLT project, I'm happy to say we have actually started spending some money on that. And so we hope to be moving forward. As you know, the RFP has been issued, and we hope to see that happening, but it's nice to see some action on that fund. ARPA funds from FY21, those were the ones that were allocated for, I'm sorry, for FY22. We're the ones that allocated to try and do some revenue, grant funding and so on for water and sewer. We've expended a little less than half of that. Senior meals, we have expended both the borough funds and the Homer Foundation funds. We're in the process of closing those out right now. We have received verbal assurance, and this happened again last week. I spoke to both the program manager and the grants manager from the state, and we have been told that this grant agreement is in process. We should see it by the end of this week. They've identified the amount of funding. It should be more than enough to carry the program through the end of the year. But like a lot of places in the state, their grants and contracts crew is pretty understaffed. If we have not seen some paperwork by the end of this week, we may do some contacting of some of our legislators who have been helpful in the past in moving that forward so that we can have some assurance in that program. The highway safety grant has been closed out. The FEMA assistance to firefighters grant, there hasn't been any expenditures yet, but we expect that there will be soon. The power lift and cot upgrade kits were due to be delivered by the end of this month, and as soon as they're delivered, we can schedule installation. So we're hoping that that grant will be expended fairly soon, even though we haven't actually spent any money yet, but all the materials have been ordered. We've been in contact with people that are going to do the installation. Once the stuff arrives, it should be fairly quick to get that grant completed. Community Development Block Grant, we've expended just under 200,000. The state has been really good in quickly issuing reimbursements. So you can see that right now, the amount that hasn't been reimbursed is less than $500. So that continues to move forward. And then the Clean Water Action Grant, I have a meeting tomorrow with someone from DEC to talk about the work plan, the budget, and so on. And so we should be seeing a grant agreement on that fairly soon. But they have identified $225,447 is the amount of that grant. So just a few little details to iron out on the work plan and the budget, but it shouldn't take long. And so that grant we're authorized to start working in March. And that is a quick synopsis of my report, and I am open to questions.
Thank you, Jan. Any questions from anyone on council?
Yeah, I guess I have a comment. If I was just looking. If I'm saying this right, not taking the payment for the grader out of this number, but so with the I'm sorry, with the sales tax and the amount that we made so far from our Charles Schwab account, we brought in about 85,000 in revenue between those. Am I doing that right?
Yes, that is correct.
Okay.
Although the interest on the Charles Schwab account, yeah, that does go up and down quite a bit.
Right, I understand
And
that.
that's not a revenue that we are accessing at this point.
Right, I get that, but that's pretty good. I mean, what we've accomplished just in, making a few changes and of course the sales tax. We're seeing a little bit of headway. So I think that's really good.
One thing of note too, just on the
Thanks.
sales tax, the sales taxes will, as inflation goes down, those, now it's twofold. So all the prices are inflated right now, right? So you're getting an artificially high sales tax just because the cost of items are inflated with inflation. So it's kind of those track each other. So now as inflation goes down, maybe demand will go back up to offset that. So you never know, but it is from what you're saying. I mean, just on the revenue that's available is that extra 20,000 there, over the cost of the grader as of right now, what we had looked at. And then that's something we still have to come back around on too. Maybe we did get to the bottom of that. I don't recall in terms of what the official response was from the attorney when that was, when can those additional revenues be accessed, if it was after the grader was paid off or was it annually? And I don't recall if we ever came full circle on that one or not, but there's definitely a revenue surplus there.
Yeah, and interim city manager Gagel and I were speaking about this last week, and I don't believe the attorneys have given us an answer on that yet. I know former city manager Friedlander and I spoke about that, and while awaiting the attorneys, we agreed that it seemed the wisest thing to not touch any of that principal until that account held enough to pay off the grader, just so that we had a good safety margin there. But I do believe we are still waiting for the attorneys to give their advice on that.
Yeah, thank you, Jan, for that. Yeah, at the very least, we'd have to wait to get legal opinion on that so we don't do anything wrong there. So, okay, nope, sounds good. Jennifer, you have your hand up.
Yeah. So I see that we're at the sales tax, continuing on with that conversation, that is at 98%. And I get that, that busy time of the year is already in that 98. So it won't exactly double for the next half, but there's obviously going to be extra money. And I brought this up to Rachel, and I briefly spoke with the mayor about, and this would be more of something for Heidi, not so much for Jan, about repaying those harbor kiosks. Is there a way to use the additional, not the additional 2%, but the additional regular sales tax, since it's higher than projected, there's going to be extra money that we didn't budget for. Is there any way to throw that back at that 30,000 and repay that? I don't know if that's a legal question, probably, but obviously there's extra money sitting somewhere that we didn't budget for if we're already that high on our sales tax revenue. Does that make sense? What I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, it makes sense to me. I'm not sure if Jan or Heidi want to take that.
Through the mayor, all I will say on that is I don't believe that there'll be a legal issue in that in terms of repaying for the kiosks, because we have already paid for those kiosks. We own them free and clear. It would just be a matter of shifting funds from one account to another. And that would be, I believe, between the city manager and the city council to decide if that's an action that should be taken.
Okay. Yeah, I guess it shouldn't be a legal thing. That's good to know. Yeah, I don't know how. Maybe I can talk to Heidi more about that or something, or I don't know. It's just a thought, so we can move forward past that and maybe kick that into the Charles Schwab account to get more money off of that and check one thing off our list. Yeah. Thanks.
Yeah, that might be something to bring up, as we start budget cycle now too. Because then I mean, there'll be a little bit of a pay down. I think, I'm not sure, and I mentioned this before on basically any of the rent that we're getting out of that now, even as small as it is, it should still go towards, I assume, paying down the balance, but maybe I'm wrong there. I guess we can just wait when we start getting into the budget cycle and having work sessions. When we start getting into each one of these funds, I'm sure that we'll have more of an opportunity to talk about each one of those individually.
Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, good discussion, Jennifer. Thanks for bringing that up, because I think that is something we need to look at during budget times. And my question is to Jan. Jan, with our budget, do you see anything that's sending up a red flag or any concerns you have? Right now, I'm looking at it thinking, oh, it doesn't look too bad. I see some, on the accrual basis, in our general fund, the revenue less expenses, I'm seeing a lot of parentheses, which to me tells me we're not doing well. But it's early, or I don't know how to exactly explain that. But for your knowledge, looking at our budget, do you have any concerns?
Through the mayor, in the general fund, yes, there are a lot of parentheses in there, but the general fund, I think the important number there is that bottom line number, because all the revenue goes to one particular class. We have some classes such as, say fire and EMS that are just, they are never going to generate any revenue just by their nature. So I don't have any real concerns about the general fund there. Actually, the general fund, I think, is doing quite well. And if it stays on track, I think we're in good position to really take the deficit that we have in that fund down quite a bit this year. So I'm not so concerned there. And interim city manager Gagel and I have talked a little bit about the special revenue funds. Those are a little more concerning. Again, boat haul out, Harbor and Jackaloff, we do expect to see additional revenue coming into those as we get towards spring. So that's less concerning. Sorry, I'm having to switch working on a very small screen here, which can be a little bit challenging. Water and sewer, the numbers that you see there do not reflect the resolution that was passed recently to move some funds from the reserves into the active fund. So they are actually in a little bit better position than you see there. The other thing that City Manager Gagel and I have talked about is the insurance costs. And we may be looking at doing some reallocations there, because the way the budget was set up, the insurance costs were spread across the various classes, but when we actually look at where we incur most of our insurance, it's actually in the general fund. And the community assistance program funding was identified to offset in the budget this year, but to offset insurance costs, and that's in the general fund. And I know this gets a little confusing, and I'm sorry that I'm not able to explain it a little more clearly, but we talked about looking at some reallocations there, and that is going to change the budgets in the special revenue funds. We're going to be, I think, moving the costs of the insurance back toward the general fund, because that's where it's incurred, and that's where the cap funding to offset the insurance was put. And that's going to move some of the bills, some of the costs out of those special revenue funds as well. This is kind of the time of the year when, as we're getting ready for the budget revisions, that we try and find time to kind of pull back and take some big picture looks at where we're sitting. And so we've started that process, but haven't had a chance to really get into detail yet. I've been kind of caught up in quarterlies and end of year and just all the things that come with 2022 turning into 2023, but I'm just about done with that process now. And we're hoping to, in the next couple of weeks, to really be able to get some big picture looks that where we can come back to the council soon with some suggestions when it comes to budget reallocation, and that may change or at least mitigate some of those numbers you see in parentheses there. And I'm sorry, that was a very long-winded answer.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. And I appreciate your documentation that you're giving us, the financial report. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Jennifer, did you have a follow-up? I see your hands back up.
Yeah, remind me for the permanent fund, we had to make it a revenue account or whatever. What was it that we were putting into it? Why don't I remember that?
I'm not sure that I can speak to that as clearly as I'd like. When I began at the city, there was approximately $540,000 that was identified as the permanent fund. And exactly where all those revenues have come from over the years, I'm afraid I don't know very well. But the city council, because the permanent fund was not really generating revenue, that's why the city council elected to move the majority of that to the Alaska Permanent Capital Management Fund, was, in an effort to make that more of a revenue generating fund. But I cannot really speak to what has created that corpus over the years.
No, sorry, I don't want to cut you off, but not what's in there right now. When we established it, because we had to be kicking something into it every year for it to be a permanent fund account. Remember, something had to change. And what is it that for some reason, I thought it was the remote seller's tax or something, but it must not be. What is it that we're putting in there? Why don't I remember that?
I have to honestly say, I would have to go back and review that myself. I don't know off the top of my head.
And I forget too, I should know this. The name of that. It's to be qualified as a special revenue fund. Basically, you had to have had you had to have basically some sort of dedicated revenue stream going into that account.
Right.
Other than, I think, just an interest-bearing account.
Right. I remember what it is, and I'm sure I could. It's on the ordinance, I believe.
Yeah, it's buried in the notes here somewhere.
I don't know if anyone else remembered off the top of their head. Obviously not. Okay, thanks.
All right. Anyone else on the finance report?
Mayor Campbell,
Yep. Go ahead, John.
I just have two questions. The 30,000 that was retained out for the permanent fund money. I'm assuming that's in this $41,000 amount towards the top there, correct?
Yes,
Yeah.
so it was originally 40,000, and with the interest that's accumulated on that account, it's
Oh,
41,000
okay.
and change now.
And then what's the plan if we don't receive funding for the senior meals?
The plan right now, if we do not receive funding, is to suspend it at the end of this month.
Okay,
Like I said, I've been reassured repeatedly that it's not a problem. There were several communities that were in the same situation we were. I know Anchorage, Bethel, and a couple others were in the same situation. And when the new solicitation that we applied under in November came out, they were identifying very specific amounts for very specific communities. So the funds have been earmarked for us. We have completed the application. It's just waiting for that final official paperwork.
well, I appreciate that. I just wondered if there was another plan in place in case it doesn't go. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, John. Okay. Anyone else on the finance report? Okay. Thank you, Jan. Appreciate that. I'm going to move on to item J2, Harbor Masters report. This will be found on page 17, and I see Layla is with us also.
Hello, everybody.
Hello.
Hello. So this report is kind of vague this month because as everybody knows, I went on vacation for 2 weeks. So I just got back this last Tuesday. So I left a few things off of it. Just want to let you all know that the security cameras, 5 are up and running. They're all doing well. There's 2 at the city office, 2 at the harbor, and 1 at the multipurpose building. And tomorrow we are adding additional Arlo system to the fire department. I'm going to help Jamie with that. And a quick update on the 30-day parking. We have 3 vehicles that have been there pretty much all winter. I have contacted one of the owners. He has a plan to move it as soon as possible. He said by the end of the week. And the other 2 vehicles belong to the same owner. I left a message with them and they have not got back to me. So as soon as I hear from them, I'll have an update on those guys too. And on this report, I left upcoming section. Since last Tuesday, the holding corporation biannual report is done. We are now in good standing with the state of Alaska. And the holding corporation annual report is done and was mailed today. You guys got any questions?
Any questions for Leila?
If I may, Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
Maybe she hasn't gotten to this part yet, but if you could refresh my memory as far as the holding corp, and then also if you could also tell me, what is it you do monitoring the Lollipop Park? What is your duties involved with that? And also with all this snow and wet snow and rain, how has it been out at Jackaloff for your safety being on those floats? Do you go out there and shovel them off? I've just been thinking about you during this horrible time of weather. Those are my 3 questions. Thank you, Leila.
So for Lollipop Park, I just kind of keep an eye on the little kiddos when they're around. In the summer, we pick up trash, keep an eye on the kids if they're throwing rocks at each other, stuff like that. In the wintertime, it's pretty calm and mellow. And the holding corporation. So the holding corporation is what holds the 7 charter permits. We have a biannual report for the state corporations. And every year we also have an annual report with the National Marine Fisheries for the federal side. Hopefully the biannual report is all good and we'll hear back from the feds here probably within the next month or so to see if we get those for the following year. And as for Jack Love, my husband Hans does the snow removal out there. And he does his best around his other jobs. So he is a volunteer.
Wow. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Leila? Leila, were you going to go through the rest of that, or is that the rest of that just kind of for the information for us to read?
It's just kind of information.
Okay.
So yeah, that's about all that I got. If you got any more questions.
Okay. Any final questions for Leila from anyone? Okay, thank you, Leila. Welcome back.
Thank you. Everybody have a good night.
Okay, you too. Okay, item J3 is the maintenance public works report. This will be found on page 20 of your packet. And I see Jordan's online as well here.
You guys hear me?
Yep, got you loud and clear, Jordan.
All right. So not a whole lot going on that's out of the ordinary since it's winter time, and basically we just think about pushing snow and sanding and all that business. And we've had a little personnel change. Wade has quit, and So we're gonna looking at rehiring, hiring another person for that position. Guess that wasn't a good fit. We didn't quite work out. That's okay. His work was pretty good. But yeah, we'll have to hire. So if you guys have anybody, send them to the city so we can see if they'd like to work. Moving on, we're thinking about the end of the year and water distribution, and kind of did some tallying, and I gave you guys, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but it was kind of a monthly gallons per day and per minute, some numbers, and it'd been nice to have a little visual, but I don't know if that was done or not. And it kind of shows during March when I came back, the day I came back from vacation, the water system thawed out and we had a tremendous amount of leaking going on for a couple months. And it kind of shows, going from 60 some thousand gallons a day to hundreds of thousands of gallons a day. And of course that, adds stress to the maintenance department, but the water plant can handle making that much water that at the level we were at, we were able to maintain. And then and the only thing is that it's kind of a waste of our chemicals. And if that kind of leak would happen in a dry season, that could be an issue. But the spring thaws bring out water leaks, and of course they're not easily detected, unless they're squirting out of the road. And so anyways, you guys can see the water usage, and one of the neatest things about that was the last leak that was located was identified by a resident adjacent to a house across the street, and a little bit of troubleshooting, leak detection, realized that it was a house that wasn't regularly occupied. And that was our last big leak that we had for the year, and we were down to 25 gallons a minute. So, which is a number that has never been attained, it's unheard of. And we had 30,000 gallon a day repeated observations in the meter. So we know that we can, as a community, can use very little amounts of water when things are right. And of course, as the winter went along, it's already doubled, but a lot of residents are running their water because they don't want to have frozen pipes in their streets. And so that's just a fact of life living here in Seldovia. So, but it'd be neat to see in the spring how things, if we're going to have another breakup in March where water lines will thaw out and break and all that business, or if we're going to maintain to prepare for that kind of operating situation. The only thing we can do is make sure we have chemicals stockpiled, and the chemicals are of course very expensive sometimes, and when you use 4 times the amount of water, you use more than 4 times the amount of chemicals, because the chemical usage is not linear with water consumption. The more water you use, the more chlorine you need to get your adequate contact time. And so, if we're using 4 times the amount of water, we're going to use more like 6 times the amount of chlorine. And so that adds a lot of expense. But it's just a fact of life. We can't micromanage how people use water, if they're going to change their water lines when they get old. But wastewater collections as normal. We've had a lot of flushables clogging the pumps. I wish they would refrain from flushing what's called flushables. They can clog a pump instantly, and of course you got to get in there and take the clog out by hand. There's no There's nobody that will do it for you. And usually articles of clothing are found in with those clogs, typically underwear. And it's just one of those deals. If we were more advanced, we'd probably have collecting screens and in vaults around town and collect those kind of things. But we have an old system that just collects them all in the pumps. And it's just part of the deal. We could someday budget for some better impellers that would pass those kind of foreign objects. But at this point, we just catch them and throw them in the garbage. And those kind of things can add expense. We've lost one pump. The flushables wound around the shaft and ruined the seal on the motor and ruined the entire pump. And that particular pump is an economy based pump of $5,000 a piece. And so flushables cost us money eventually. If not because of parts, it'll be energy. If a pump is clogged, it might not be detected immediately, and the only reason you will know is the hours on the hour meter will increase from running time, which costs us more in electricity. And I don't know. I don't think our electricity is discounted here, so it's the less the pumps run, the better. When things are normal, our pumps might only run total between the 2 or 3 hours a day, which is pretty low considering that there's a constant infiltration of water, groundwater, and then of course the whatever water we distribute in town from drinking water. Snow removal has been going pretty good. We had a lot of buildup of ice on Main Street. We can't go out and scrape every time it precipitates. And so I get some pretty bad buildup on Main Street. And if you guys have noticed, but in places the ice was 6 to 8 inches thick. I've come across 10 inches of ice on Main Street. And when I needed to open a manhole, took quite a while to break all the ice up so I could look in the manhole. So scraping the ice down on Main Street is kind of a necessary deal, especially to expose the storm drains. So like today, when the streets are flooding, they can drain. And, it's kind of an inconvenience, during the day having to negotiate equipment, but that's when we have to do it.
Jordan,
Yes.
are you defending grading the roads?
Nope. Just pointing out how it goes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's not a perfect process. Sometimes you get some whip-to-dos and some pavement sticking out. It's not fun, but we all drive these roads together.
Yeah, you're doing a great job out there.
No, and the sanding department is Tyler usually. We just have a small bit to sand that the city, keeps up with, and yes, that seems to be kind of minimal. I don't know how much sand we use a year, but typically it's not more than 8 to 10 yards that the city uses, which is basically one truckload of Tyler's truck. So it's kind of economical on our side. Of course, sometimes there's probably more gravels needed than we actually put down, but let's try to keep the approach to the multi-purpose building sanded as best we can. And some of the other spots where the sand truck can't go, like Hill Street and B Street and a couple other spots. And that's a good one for the street guys to do. Like Johnny, he's on the street and he takes care of a lot of that stuff since he's not up in the water plant. And so those things kind of go nonstop. They've been out messing with trying to keep the jackalope float together. And of course, that thing's old and getting worn out. And we have parts and pieces, but you got to kind of work with the tides and the weather and the other projects we got going on, snow removal or whatever, to keep Jackalope going. And as long as we can keep fixing on it, we can keep using it. And that's the goal in the Public Works Department, is to keep it usable. You guys have any questions? There was something else I was going to point out.
Mr. Mayor, oh, go ahead, Jordan.
Well, I kind of made a couple notes on that water thing, and it showed the large increase. And then it was going to show the peaks, and I should have broke it down just a little bit better so you could see when the repairs were made, how many gallons per minute one service repair will make, because we are a small community, and even though the leaks are kind of repetitious, it's the same thing that happens. The flare rots away on the copper tube and they start leaking, and usually they're at 10 gallons a minute, but they can go up to like 17 gallons a minute, and some of the larger lines up to 30 gallons a minute. And it's amazing what one or two little repairs will make in our water usage, and it's really good to keep those things kind of buttoned up. And during the winter, it's okay though for people to trickle their water, because it's not, it's just not like a broken pipe. It's, people trickle, and it doesn't make as big a difference as a broken line. And so one of the things I like to say is that if you hear anything weird down your water line, call it in and see if we can locate it, because you never know, there might be your neighbor's line could be broken. And that's like what Heath Smith heard. And Heath Smith has hearing aids, and he heard a leak in what he thought was in his house, and ended up being his neighbor's house. And that's how loud the pipes were screaming coming in, across the street. And I sure am glad that he had called that in so we could find that, because we had a pretty thorough leak detection for 2022, but it was, we still had one that was out there that was leaking a lot of water. And I'm glad it was found. That's it. Any questions?
Okay, thanks, Jordan. Vivian, did you have a question?
Yeah, actually, question, comment, maybe more of a comment. Jordan, thank you for your Public Works crew and the great job you're doing. I see you all out there pushing snow, moving, having the good equipment that you're working with. I'm really proud that we've been able to give that to you, to good winter operations that you guys can support. And the water info that's in our laydown, great document. I really appreciated seeing that. And then also, I'd like to say that last paragraph you put in there shocked the heck out of me. So I think that's something that the city office, we need to get a PR going about these flushable wipes and undergarments clogging into the lift station. That just kind of blew me away. So maybe there's a way that we could help you out by getting this word out that flushables aren't necessarily flushables, and maybe we can do something to help you out. But Jordan, your crew is doing a great job. I really appreciate it. And again, seeing you guys working, teaming up out there and getting the snow removed and the ice, it's great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else with questions for Jordan?
Mr. Mayor, I have one.
Yep, go ahead, Harmony.
I don't know if this is actually for Jordan or if this is for literally anybody else, like 3 other people in this room. Is there an operating camera in our fire hall at this time?
Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yep, go ahead.
I believe that was what Harbor Master
So
Peterson was talking about.
Are they on the exterior or the interior?
There currently is not there is not a camera that is operating in the fire hall at this moment, but I believe that it's in the works this week to get that functional again.
Okay.
Yeah, it just was a very outdated system that kind of went to the wayside. So they are working on it.
Okay. Well, other than that, thanks for, you guys are crushing it out there. Thank you for everything you guys do. I feel like Public Works probably gets the most people see everything that you guys do. So hopefully people stop you and say thank you. You guys are awesome.
Okay, thank you, Harmony. Anyone else?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to make a comment too and thank Jordan and Johnny and Wade for all the hard work that they do. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Yeah, Jordan, I have a quick question for you. As we slowly start to transition back to summer here in the next couple, 3-4 months. And as you know, there's going to be money, and we'll obviously we get into budget time. I know we have a match, but we've got money for it should be coming our way for the Seldovia Safe Roads for road topping there. Have you given that any thought in terms of the where you'd like to use that? And I guess just in thoughts of doing that, assuming we get to do some of that work this summer, would that be something where we would just purchase the material from one of the local quarries, and then you guys would use the grader to take care of the actual spreading of that?
Yeah, yeah, and of course I haven't done it myself, but I mean we're just gonna have to choose a couple areas and lift them up a little bit, you know, add a couple inches to wherever they're kind of low. You know, there's a east addition in the intersection of Augustine and or C Street and Eider Lane is, you know, pretty low, and that could use material. And there's a couple other spots that could use a little material here and there, and we'll have them dump it and spread it, and you know, that's about the only thing we can do is dump it and spread it. You know, if we could go to the next level and compact some of it, that would be nice, but I don't even know if the compactor is available anymore. I think Jim has sold the one that still worked. So we're gonna,
Right.
you know, we'll be able to definitely use the funds up and material. The more material, the better. You know, all the roads are in certain, or dirt roads, there's certain sections need material, and so you know, it'll be great to get it out there and spread it out and tune some of the roads up again, especially some of the ones that have, you know, basically there's issues down underneath that we can't really reconcile right now. There's some culverts that we can fix, and I'm not sure how the funds will be used for that. You know, you guys have probably heard about the Rocky Street culvert over by you know, one of the residents there, not a resident, but a parking lot, and that's turned into a area of contention. In this culvert is going to have to be repaired because it has a hole, and there was a hole in the street one day that a kid could have stepped in, or a dog, and our dog did eventually, and then we'll have to fix that. And I don't know if the Safe Roads money will be able to, you know, use for that or not. But, you know, lifting roads is going to be amazing because some of our roads are in pretty bad shape.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Yep. I figured you guys were already thinking about that. So obviously we'll have to work through during the budget cycle here to figure out what we're going to do on the match there. I think it's $4,000 or something that we got to come up with. So, but I think that'll be money well spent to get the balance of that so that we can use that here this summer or fall to get our roads topped. So, or spring, whenever we can do that. So,
Yeah.
all right. Yep, appreciate that. Any final questions for Jordan before we get rolling here?
Another comment for me is, you guys have mentioned, you know, you probably have all seen the new machine out there, and I have to say that thing is amazing. That thing can move on its own as much snow as the grader and the loader can together. And so it really cuts down on the time spent in the machine, and it's very fuel efficient. It's incredible. It uses less than a gallon an hour, and so it's just a vast improvement. The other machines are still great snow removal equipment, but it's just amazing what one person can do in a machine. And the way, you know, we couldn't have had it any better when we had 3 operators on the street. but right now we only have two. But being able to shove all that snow with that one machine sure makes a difference. And I sure hope it as time goes along, it just keeps working out for us.
Yeah, thanks for that comment, Jordan. That's good to hear. And I think this goes back to the decision-making process here a couple of years ago when we worked through that process and outfitting that grader. And, you know, it was an additional cost. It was $40,000 or whatever for that, the V plow and stuff on the front, that whole front end nose kit on there and stuff. But I think that's obviously from my standpoint, that was money well spent. And I think that's obviously paying off now. You know, just looking at what you guys do out there. So that's good news. Good to hear. All right, well, let's get moving here. Thank you, Jordan. Appreciate that. And
Thank you.
that'll conclude all of the administrative reports tonight under item J. So we'll move on to item K, public hearings, none. Item L, unfinished business, none. Item M, new business. This is item M1, resolution 23-29, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Seldovia, Alaska, approving the city manager contract with Heidi Gagel and authorizing the mayor to execute the appropriate documents and possible requests for executive session pursuant to AS 4462. Matters subject to tend to prejudice the reputation and character of any person, provided the person may request a public discussion. City manager contract negotiations. So this will be found on page 22 of your packet. And my plan is right now, I've given this a little bit of thought here. I think we can go through this in an open meeting without going, my opinion, without going into executive session, unless somebody feels that there's the need to. And again, there's nothing to hide here. This is all public. The only reason we would go into an executive session is if you felt that the conversation was getting to the point where we might be discrediting, someone's character, i.e. the city manager. So other than that, I think we'll just go ahead and get started, and then we'll kind of walk through it. My intent is to walk through the contract and then open up for questions, and we can get into discussion. And at that time, if someone feels, before we make a motion to approve the contract, if someone feels, different and wants to go into executive session, they can certainly feel free to make a motion to do that. So, Heidi, did you want anything to offer first before we get started here?
No, that sounds great, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. Let's see. All right.
Mr. Mayor, are the details of the agreement in our packet? Or just a resolution? I thought I saw it, but now I'm not sure.
Yeah, you know what? That is a good point. I don't think the actual contract was sent out, was it, Heidi?
It was sent in a separate email titled something about possible executive session, draft
Yeah.
contract for possible executive session. It was not put out in the public realm yet in case there was a huge discrepancy that council wanted to address in executive session. However, I do have a copy in front of me if somebody needs to see it in the room.
Yeah,
And of course, that contract is a public document, and will be shared once approved. It just wasn't shared at the beginning in case there was something in executive session that council wanted to address. But everybody should have it, except for of course, the public at this point. I apologize for that. I wasn't sure how the discussion was going to go. But I do have one here in the room for anybody who is public in the room that would like to see it, and council should all have it in their emails.
Yeah, it was entitled City Manager Employment Agreement, or actually
Draft.
it was different.
Actually, I think it was
It was
CM contract.
Contract
HTML
Heidi
updated.
Gagel updated, yeah, is how
Yes.
it came across.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, well, I can just, I'll kind of start walking through this here. Let me this in front of me here. Okay, so I sat down, per the council's direction, I sat down with Heidi. We went through a draft contract based on what she was looking for. We used the previous contract from the previous city manager as a template. And then we started walking through it, and I'm going to go through the nuts and bolts of this on section 1.2, effective date of the agreement, the period. The big thing for me, this is, we both agreed on a 24-month period. And then there will be an evaluation 12 months from the effective date. And at the-
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. Should we screen share and make what we can all see available to the public who's not in the room? Can we do that?
Yep, I can actually share my screen here. Stand by. Let's see. I think Heidi, I've got, you guys would have to give me permission, or one of you guys would have to share it.
You should be able to now, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Let me try it again here. There we go. Let me know if you guys can see that.
And Mr. Mayor, but I don't think that's the latest one they have in front of them because I did remove the highlights. So if you want, I can share the one that was shared through email.
Yeah, why don't you go ahead and do that?
Great.
Okay, there we go. Can everyone see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. All right, so on section 1.2, as I had stated, effective date, term will be for 24 months. And then whenever we come to an agreement, that will be the effective date. And then there will be an evaluation. There will be an evaluation 12 months from the effective date. And then at the end of the term, at which time the city manager and council shall evaluate and renegotiate terms agreed to by both parties. Now, and Heidi, I think we may have to correct 1.2. We'll think about that when we get down to salary, because there was remember there was a 6-month review there. So we'll have to look at that language, the way that worked out. So.
Yeah, I think that can still be included, but yeah.
Okay. A couple other things. We go to 1.5. Really, there's anything in here. It's all the exact same language as the previous one. When we get down to 1.5, term of office, I just wanted to highlight at will. City manager holds office at the pleasure of the council as an employee at will, subject only to exclusive remedies upon termination provided under this agreement. And then skipping down under 1.5, the city manager shall not be entitled to any termination pay, additional compensation, and or severance pay except legally accrued and unused PTO leave to the date of termination unless otherwise agreed upon, approved by council. So basically at will, and no severance. Severance is part of this package. 1.6 vacation leave. City manager is eligible to accrue vacation leave at a rate of 8.33 per pay period. Heidi, I believe that's where you were now, correct?
Correct. So under highlight, it's with length of service and a beginning leave bank of 40 hours available out of what's already accrued. So that's just that 40 hours will roll over, as well as the length of service that I've already performed for the city.
Yep, and then the remaining available leave accrued as the city clerk will be cashed out at the rate of the interim city manager. So that's basically just a matter of how the money is accrued and gets paid out on the vacation on the liabilities accrual within the city benefits program. So. Same thing, 240 hours max cap. Yep. And so basically you need to, you don't accrue anymore after 240. So we had a few issues in the past on that. So that was taken care of in the previous contract that rolls over to this contract. So 1.7 administrative leave there's also a provision in here is eligible for 40 hours to accrue on January 1 each year during their service to the city. Administrative leave is paid as if paid time off had been used. However, administrative leave does not carry over year to year and is not eligible to be cashed in or out at any time. Basically, if you guys recall, this was a provision that we had agreed to in Rachel's contract, except that she had 80 hours in hers. Heidi was willing to do this at 40 hours. And this is for some of those bigger projects. I know the city manager is an exempt employee, but there's a lot of time that it was never truly captured where, they felt they couldn't, be compensated for during travel, after hours. Some of the larger projects, I know there's hundreds of extra hours spent during the budget cycle that goes for almost, 4 to 5 months here. So I thought 40 hours was more than fair on that administrative leave provision under 1.7. And if you guys have any questions at any time, just stop me and we can hammer them out while they're fresh on everybody's mind. So any questions up to this point?
Mr. Mayor, I just have is that a typo where it says administrative leave, city manager is eligible for 40? Should the two
Yeah, there's a typo there. Is
TO be
eligible.
removed? Okay.
Yeah, is eligible should be for 40 hours of administrative leave. So the two should.
I think there was another one someplace too, but I don't know where now. Well, anyway.
Okay. Yep, if we'll have to make another turn through this, if there's any additional edits on the, just in terms of grammar. Okay, no change on the next one. Yep, go ahead.
It has to do with the vacation time. If you could scroll back to that, I don't have the.
Under 1.6.
Probably where she's going between what she's got for her clerk time.
Yep, 1.6.
So can you just what is happening with the time she has right now?
She's gonna cash all that except for at her current rate. And then she's gonna carry over 40 hours. So she's got 40 hours on the books.
Oh, okay. Okay. I wasn't quite sure what. And then she can accrue, she starts at that 40 and goes up to the possible.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We thought that was a fair compromise. So it's a few dollars more with the 40 hours in there. But that basically gets the city in a better position to pay out at the lower rate.
Gotcha. Okay, thanks.
Yep, you bet. Okay, 1.8, 1.9, 1.10, 1.11, no changes. 1.12, 1.13, 1.14. Let's see.
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
1.9 other leaves of absences, that's holidays, I take it.
Yeah,
For the
there's
holidays.
yep, anywhere, that's just the standard language. And I think it's the not holidays, other leaves of absence would be in the code, like FMLA, there's a couple of other things in there.
Oh, okay,
Sick, court leave,
I got it.
military leave.
I got it.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yep, you bet. Okay, under 1.14, that's where it talks about performance evaluation. There'll be an annual evaluation process at a minimum shall include the opportunity for both parties to conduct a formulary session where the governing body and the city manager meet first to discuss goals and objectives of both the past 12-month performance period, as well as the upcoming 12-month performance period. So there's some additional language in there that all stayed the same that we had under Rachel's contract as well. So no significant or any changes there. The ethics under 1.15, no changes there. That all stayed the same. We get down to 2.1 base salary, and we came to a compromise of starting at 85 per year. And then there was a provision in here, city manager is eligible for a performance-based increase of 2.5%, their current annual salary 6 months after their start date, and an annual salary increase not to exceed 5% each year upon their annual performance-based review beginning on January 1, 2024, and in each year to follow January 1st, 2025. So the 5% was the same as Rachel's. This has a 2.5 built in after the first 6 months. And then that would mean at the end of the first year, she would only be eligible for another 2.5. So it's a maximum of 5% during the year. So in this provision, the 2.5 was after Heidi was looking for more money to start. We discussed a number of items as to why we reached a happy medium here, but based on performance at 6 months, I thought it would be fair to do a 2.5. And then of course, at the annual review, up to the council's discretion, that could be up to an additional 2.5 at the end of 23.
Mayor, where does the 2 years, when we first started this out, does the 2 years come into effect here somehow with, oh, shoot. I just lost it.
Yeah, that was back at the beginning, Vivian. So that's the term of the contract is only 2 years. So it'll be, yeah, so January 23 to January 25.
Okay. All right, so the 5%, okay, I was misunderstanding that. So it'd be 2.5% after 6 months, and then 6 months later, depending on if the council went for it, be the other 2.5.
Correct.
So that's at about $4,000 or so for the first year that we're talking adding on.
Absolutely correct.
Okay, and then, and the next part we're going to talk about, benefits, materials.
Yeah, then under 2.2 on benefits, that we left that at the 13%. She'll make a retirement contribution to the current deferred comp retirement program in the amount of 13% of the city manager's base salary each calendar year. I left that alone unless anybody's got any super heartburn in it, in that. Obviously, it's a professional position, and I felt that was, that was something that was commensurate with, with the position.
Mhm. Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, you bet. You
Yeah, no, that was one discussion item that previous city manager discussed, that when we're looking at budget, we're looking at city managers' base salary, et cetera, that we should be looking at that 13% that we're getting into the ICMA. So that is an area that we discussed earlier that might be something that we need to be looking at depending on our budget. Just a reminder.
Yeah, no, and that is something that, I mean, so this contract would be enforced for 2 years. I think in the context of that, some of that was, where we could reduce that amount and then, maybe offset some of that, maybe not the full amount, but there could be an offset in cash for if we had a city manager that maybe was, double dipping, so to speak, if they were already coming in under a current retirement program and didn't need to have an additional retirement. But yeah, no, I think that's something that's, it should be fair and open during the budget process that if we were going to make a change, I think we'd have to really start getting our ducks in a row, for the next contract that was coming up.
Mr. Mayor, if I may with that, the
Yep.
13% is in code. So while it wouldn't necessarily be, it could change in the contract for the city manager and the chief of police, that 13% is a designated rate in code for full-time city employees. So that's currently something that all full-time city employees receive, with the exception of the city clerk and the finance officer, who are through the PERS system with the state of Alaska. So I do understand where Rachel's suggestion came from, that the retirement could be lowered and the salary could be increased to incentivize somebody to come in who wasn't looking for a retirement, but was looking for more salary. I wanted to point that out in case there was an all around discussion in the future about that retirement account, that is something that is done across the city. But it has, we have had city managers in the past. The city manager, three city managers ago, actually had an increased retirement and a decreased salary because that was his preference at the time. So it's not to say it's not a negotiating fact or item, but just to have a little bit of background that is something that the city does offer to all full-time employees.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi, for pointing that out. Okay, on 2.3, basically the only additional stipend here is this, there's a $65 a month for the cell phone. I think that's pretty standard. And then under 2.4, education expenses, Heidi had originally asked for the city to pay for some additional education for her while she's completing her degree. And so we talked about that. And I didn't have there was some different amounts thrown around. And what we agreed to was this $3,000. And I guess a good way to look at this is that, we had paid previous managers, I think, the numbers varied. I think Rachel was either 3,000 or 3,500 for, moving expenses. So the way I looked at that, I thought this was, again, I think this was a fair trade. And obviously, I'm always in favor of continuing education, especially when hopefully it could be used something to benefit, obviously Heidi's personal growth and development, but also, the city as well, because obviously it's going to help her to do, her job better, in the future. So that was the mindset on that. I thought that was an easy one that wouldn't break the bank, but yet still be something of meaning to her. I know she's paying far more than that now a year in education expenses. So any questions or comments from anyone on that?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, and then I'll get back to you, Jennifer.
Yeah, the educational expenses, we want to help our employees with their education and keeping up on stuff. Just running the numbers real quick, from the budget standpoint, I'm looking at with the 13% ICMA and the 5%, which will be an annual 5% broken up in 2.5 and 2.5. And our base, we're looking at for 50, 16, 17, 18, 19 to $20,000 in addition to the 85 per year or for the year. And then the 3,000 on top of that. And then in 1.6, the payout, I don't know how much money we're talking about that payout for Heidi's going to be. But so my mind is going to, where are we at in our budget to support this? And so those numbers, and somebody else maybe could run those numbers, but the 5%, like I said, is anywhere between 42 to 4,300. The 13% is between 11,000 and 11,008. And then the education is 3. So I guess I'm just putting it out there. Is there any place that we can negotiate a little bit more? Or if the council is happy with it, that's great. But where's our money coming from? And then also the 1.6 payout. Can we say what that dollar amount would be just for reference? Because we need to come up with this money to do this, and I'm wondering where it's coming from.
Yeah, I can just take a crack at this, Vivian. Thanks for summarizing all that. Yeah, I mean, so our fiscal year should have been budgeted for based on, and Heidi, you can stop me if I'm misspeaking here, but when we did our budget last year for fiscal year 23, we should have budgeted completely through, obviously, until June 30th. And then, and that would have, so that full amount should be covered now, obviously, for the 6 months until we go. So for the first half of 2023 and this up to the start of fiscal year 24. So we should be covered for the next 6 months, and we should have actually saved money because we were down for a few months, for not much, maybe let's call it a month, for full-time city manager, and there was a small offset on the interim bump that Heidi was getting. So I guess my long story short is we should be covered up through this next budget cycle for until we agree on fiscal year 2024.
And Mr. Mayor, if I may,
Yep.
Go.
Go ahead.
if you guys are open to hearing from me, I do want to just clarify a few things about this. One being that budgeted amount for the starting salary, 85, is lower than what was budgeted for the previous city manager. Additionally, like the mayor said, there is additional expenses or additional room in the budget from not having a city manager, but the $3,000 would have been spent potentially for moving expenses anyways. And I don't know if you guys recall, but that's something that was approved of with the previous city manager. She received a $3,000 moving stipend, and then the following year, a $3,500 stipend. So there is allowance in the budget for that. But with the PTO, I hope that's not something that everybody's hung up on. The other scenario is that because it's something that I've already earned with the city. So I'm trying to, I want this to be fair to everybody around. And so having that paid out at the lower rate actually is a benefit to the city. Otherwise, and I spoke to another city manager on the peninsula who's in a similar situation, because I was curious, like, what's the best way to handle this? And they said they just rolled it over. So everything that they had earned, and it's a little bit over 200 hours I have right now in PTO, that accumulated amount is now worth what they earn as a city manager. And I didn't think that was right. So that was my proposal, was to take it at the lower rate. But if that's something that council is not prepared to pay out at this moment, then it can just roll in, and that's fine. I didn't want to set the city up to have that time worth more than when it was accumulated.
Mr. Mayor, may I tack a question on here?
Yeah, hang on 1 second, Harmony. Let's go to Jennifer first. She had her hand up and then we'll come back to you.
Yeah, so I was gonna ask, it's 200 hours now that you brought that up. So the additional, and it's getting paid out at your interim rate, not your clerk rate.
Correct,
Okay, so there's a $10 difference.
correct.
So what, 10 times 200 is 2,000? Okay. And then these education. Is this a one-time thing? Because I'm assuming you have more than one semester's worth of schooling. Is this going to be something that is going to be asked for again, or is this a one-off thing?
My understanding was that it was a one-off. I was looking for the higher salary to help compensate for my educational expenses because they are a lot more than this. But this was the compromise, is that the salary would be lower to start. And then what would have potentially been incurred for moving or living stipend, which is something else that the city has offered in the past, would just be a one-time additional help payment for those expenses.
Right. Okay. And then I don't really know if you need to answer this or this is even relevant. How much schooling do you have? What is your degree you're going after?
I'm going for a degree in applied management.
Mhm.
I'm currently enrolled through the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and I have about a year and a half left. And that's taking it 2 classes at a time. I need 14 classes to be complete.
Oh, okay. All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Jennifer. Harmony, you had a follow-up?
Well, I just was wondering, for the sake of making a point, I guess, was when a city manager, but they get their paid time off when they leave, correct? So is that true for, like, if Jan were to quit, would she get payout for her?
Right. Any accumulated PTO is
So
paid
it's a
out.
standard practice that we would pay out the PTO for the job at completion of that position.
Right. If I left the position, say
Yeah.
tomorrow, it would be paid out
Yeah.
at this rate, because that's what I'm at right now.
Okay. That's my point, I guess.
Did you have anything else, Harmony, or was that it?
No, that's the point. Like, there's a cap for how much she can incur. We're gonna pay her for this paid time off one way or another. It seems reasonable to ask for it now while she's transitioning. And as stated here and as seen in our document, it is cheaper to pay her out now at the lower rate than at the higher rate.
Yeah. And that was a compromise, obviously, leaving the 40-hour leave bank in there and then paying out the majority of it at the lower rate. So there's a benefit to the city for that portion, and the 40 hours, there's a little bit of a benefit to her to have a 40-hour leave bank to start. So she doesn't have to, the cash is nice, but it also stinks if you don't have any leave. So that's having that lead bank to start is nice. You're not in the hole right out of the gate.
And that'll come out of what's already earned. So that's not on a top. That's already what's accumulated.
Yeah. What you have already earned. Correct. And then one other note, just for everyone to keep in mind. Yeah, at some point we'll be making, I don't know if we've made that mid-year budget adjustment. We'll certainly be making it at the end of the year. Obviously not having in terms of administrative costs, we've been without a chief now for a number of months here. So there's also going to be a significant savings under that budget line item as well. So definitely going to be sitting in good shape for fiscal year 23. And we'll see, obviously we got a lot of hard work working on the FY 24 budget coming up. So, but okay. Any other questions on 2.4? Or is everyone good on that? Okay, keep rolling on down here. No other changes. 3.1, 3.2, same thing under 3.2, disability. And then a few more of these, 3.5, basically the highlight is that the city will not provide a severance payment if the city manager is terminated under this section of the agreement. That was on 3.2 as well as 3.5. 3.5 compensation upon termination. There is no severance package with this agreement. 4.1 termination by city for convenience. Same thing at the very end of that. City manager is not eligible for a severance payment unless amended by city council in writing. On the flip side of that, 4.2, city manager may terminate their employment for any reason at any time with or without cause by providing city with no less than 30 days prior written notice. So obviously that's a two-way street, and maintain good lines of communication on that.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
there's another typo there at the end of 4.1 where it says city manager not eligible for severance payment unless amended by city council.
Yep, we'll have to add the C to that. Yep, obviously the spell checker didn't pick it up. So we'll make sure we get that fixed. Let's see, 4.2, 4.3, no changes to any of that standard language. Same with 4.4, 4.5. Yeah, 5.1. This is all the standard language. No changes to any of this. That talks about our proprietary information. Basically 5.1 effectively is the same as an NDA or a non-disclosure agreement. Certain things you can and cannot talk about, that's proprietary in terms of the city business. So 6.1 talks about being agreeing to be fair and impartial in all dealings, to avoid any action which creates a conflict of interest. So we have the same set of rules for being on council or mayor. And then just general provisions, no changes. There's our contact information, and then all the standard indemnification clause on 7.2, and then 7.3 constitutes, this document constitutes the entire agreement, and goes down through the rest of all the administrative clauses. And again, no change on any of those. So should be 10 full pages, and that is the full contract document. Any other questions, comments, anything that we need to talk about? Anyone feeling like they need to go into executive session?
Mayor Campbell.
Yep, go ahead.
I just got a couple comments. I've been through a lot of these contracts over the years, and actually I'm pleased with the way it looks, and appreciate your effort and Heidi's willingness to work with us and move forward. So I'm in favor of it.
Okay, thank you, John.
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, I'd like to thank Heidi for definitely putting the city first in her heart, and the negotiations that she made. I'm pleased to see that she's willing to take on the task. And thank you, Mr. Mayor, for your working with the contract and the negotiations. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Okay, I think we'll go ahead and go to item M1C, public presentation or hearing. Any questions from anyone in the comments from anyone in the public, Heidi?
I'm not seeing any hands raised at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, sounds good. All right, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action disposition, which means I'd look for a motion to approve resolution 23-29.
Mr. Mayor, I'll make a motion that we approve resolution 23-29.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion by Rojas to approve resolution 23-29, which again is approving the city manager contract with Heidi Gagel and authorizing the mayor to execute the appropriate documents. We have a second by Peyton. Any further discussion on resolution 23-29 before we vote? Okay, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 23-29. All those in favor, Peyton,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0 with one absent. So it looks like it's official. Thank you, Heidi, and congratulations. Looks like we have a contract, assuming both of us will sign it. So should be good. All right, good. Thank you, council. I appreciate everyone's comments on that and working through that. I think we got through that in a fairly timely manner, and then addressed all the pertinent issues in that. So look forward to getting that inked and get moving. We officially will have a city manager. Let's see, last item of business for tonight, M2, is resolution 23-30, a resolution of the city council of the city of Seldovia, Alaska, authorizing the acceptance of the Alaska Clean Water Actions ACWA grant for the city of Seldovia drainage map and stormwater management plan project, and authorizing the city manager to negotiate, execute the appropriate documents, and issue a request for proposal for the project. This will be found on page 23 of your packet. And I'll go ahead and let the city manager take it away.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. As said, page 23 of the packet. This came about from a grant that Jan put in to solicit for the city, and the city received an award of no more than $225,447 for the 2023-25 state fiscal year. This actually, it spans 2 years, but it really begins in March of this year. And then let me find that date when it ends. It's not quite the full cycle. Yeah, February 28th, 2025. So with that in mind, we will issue an RFP once the grant paperwork is complete and that funding cycle officially opens in March, and move ahead with the plan. It's a 2-phase project. The first will include a community drainage study, which will use the collection of existing data, stakeholder interviews, identification of types and quantities of non-point source pollution on local water bodies, and an inventory of city streets, storm drains, and culverts. We've also discussed internally as staff that this should include snow removal and snow removal areas, as that's part of the drainage issue, is where we park our snow. And that, has been discussed over the years that is another issue for the city, as we do not have enough areas to remove snow. So that inventory will be taken. The community drainage study will create a map, and then that City of Seldovia drainage map will be used to facilitate a stormwater management plan. And with that, the hopes is that the city can use this plan to then work on projects in the future. This is a planning grant, so then this will be used to be able to go after grants in the future to complete projects and construction recommendations that come about from the project. Yes, exactly. It'll make us shovel ready for future projects related to this grant.
Great. Thank you, Heidi. Appreciate that. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up to council discussion, questions, comments.
Mr. Mayor.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, just I'm really excited that Jan went after this grant, and it's going to be a great program too. Just what Heidi just said, making a shovel ready for another project. But I would like to thank the staff for going after it and then accomplishing a great feat of getting resolution 23-30. I'm fully in favor of it and getting the monies to help us out. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Anyone else? Yeah, I'll just chime in real quick here then too. Yeah, these types of planning grants are excellent tools, obviously, for us to be able to get something of this magnitude. $225,000, that's a significant amount of money to do a lot of work. So obviously this will most likely, when the RFP comes out, we'll go to an engineering firm. There'll be a lot of back and forth. I imagine there'll be some dialogue with the city, probably figure out some things during that whole process, the information gathering process. And then hopefully we'll have a few opportunities to weigh in during the development of the drainage map and the management plan. And then like the manager said, once this is completed, this is another check that the city has to show that we're doing our due diligence. And then hopefully if there's a bigger construction project or at some point we know our roads are going to come into play in terms of redoing our streets. So there'll be a number of things that hopefully this will help to identify. As we know, all of our runoff eventually goes into one of our most important resources, which is our harbor. It eventually goes out into the bay. So yeah, super important. This will be good work, and I'll be excited to see what comes out of this. So I too will be in full support of resolution 23-30. Anyone else? Okay, we'll go ahead and go to the public. Does anyone from the public on that wishes to weigh in?
I'm not seeing any hands at this time, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, we'll go ahead and bring it back to council for final action on resolution 23-30.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
I'd like to move to approve resolution 23-30.
Okay, do we have a second?
Seconded.
Okay, we have a motion to approve resolution 23-30 by Payton, the second by Sweat. Any further discussion on resolution 23-30 before we vote? Okay, hearing none, we'll go ahead and vote on the approval of resolution 23-30. All those in favor, Payton,
Aye.
Sweat,
Aye.
Rojas,
Aye.
Kennedy,
Aye.
Swick.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes 5-0 with one excused. So that it was resolution 23-30 is passed. Okay, that'll take us to item N, city manager's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I tried to get it a little shorter this time, but just with a running checklist at the end of things that are happening. I want to apologize first off, and I'll speak with Jan in the morning. I didn't want to leave her hanging this during her report, but I was frantically searching through our past legislation and I could not find in that search, in that brief search, what that investment amount that Councilmember Swick was talking about for the permanent fund. But I know what you were referring to, Councilmember Swick, so I will make sure to locate that and get that answer back to you. With that, just starting off with a bang, the AMHS summer schedule is out for public review. And if you have any comments that you would like to put on a schedule, it's due in 3 days here on the 26th. And there's a public comment period scheduled on the 27th. For the Southeast schedule and the South Central schedules at 2 different times. That Zoom link and web information for that public hearing is available on their website. Pretty much the schedule seems to remain the same, with the Tustamina sailing the southwest route through September, with one Aleutian chain trip per month. Additionally, I was surprised to see that the Department of Transportation put out a second invitation to bid for qualified vendors capable of providing supplemental passenger vehicle and passenger, oh, that's in there twice, transportation services. This one was specific to Cook Inlet before it also included Kodiak, but this invitation to bid specifies Homer to Seldovia and back. So I'll be curious to see if anybody puts in a bid for that. Those are due by February 6th. And that's just to hopefully get a couple of trips from Homer to Seldovia and back during this time where we don't have ferry service. BPSO and Chief of Police position update. I'm pleased to inform the council that Jared Patterson, all the hiring paperwork was completed for Jared Patterson with APIA, and he was enrolled with the Academy, which begins February 12th. Mr. Nemeth shared that while at Academy, Mr. Patterson will receive all required training for certification, fire, law enforcement, and ETT, and is set to graduate and be back in the community after April 29th. I also wanted to share that the city of Seldovia has received 3 applications for chief of police position, and we're in the process of scheduling those interviews for later this week. And just to keep in mind that while, yes, we are saving a little bit of money in the budget right now by not having a chief of police, there are additional costs that the city will incur when we do hire a chief of police. The biggest, potentially the biggest being Academy. If they're a lateral police officer, then they would only be required to take a 2-week and 80-hour course at the Academy, which is something that our previous police chief took, and that was about $3,000 expense to the city just for the class. But we also pay for travel, meals, lodging, and their salary while they're there. If they're not a lateral in a lateral position already and they come onto the city, then you're looking at a 15-week course and those expenses. So just keep that in mind. Budget wise, harbor parking, Layla touched on that there are 3 vehicles. She's been in touch with them and with one of them who has a plan to move. And the other one, the other vehicle owner is the owner of 2 of the vehicles there, who she is working on getting in touch with at the moment. We do have signage, and that is something that is in the works for the spring. It's kind of hard to put out there when we're pushing snow off the bank. So the signage needs to be movable to come in and out. But realizing that there needs to be a more in-depth education campaign in the area, that's a big push for the spring, is to get that signage out. And then Harbor Master Jant Peterson had a terrific idea that come Labor Day weekend, before everybody leaves from the summer visiting season, that we put out notices on vehicles that also remind people that the parking lot is a 30-day parking lot, not a long-term parking lot during the winter. In consideration of snow maintenance and removal, those vehicles need to be able to either be regularly moved, not staying with over 30 days, or if they are in the need of long-term parking, that we have other areas in the city that can make that accommodation. She also has a registration process that's already established that will help in these kind of situations, hopefully going forward in the future. But again, that's an education process to let people know that they do need to come to the harbor master's office and register with her for use of that space. That way she has their contact information, and it hopefully goes a little bit more smoother. Jacklock repairs, just letting you guys know that we have had quite a bit of maintenance over the last couple of weeks. A couple bolts failing, some floats needed attention. Staff's been going out there pretty regularly, trying to keep up with the maintenance needed out there. There is a potential in the future that we may have to order more temporary floats, depending on the conditions of the dock and weather. But right now we are maintaining it. I also received notice from the state today that the Jacklock Bay Tidelands lease has been issued and was recorded with the state. So that is finalized. Mid-year budget adjustment. That was supposed to be at this council meeting. And I apologize, it wasn't for introduction, but the more conversation that myself and Finance Officer Yeager had together about the state of the budget and just the few things that she touched on in her finance report. Really, the big one I commented on here was the insurance. It was the general liability insurance is currently allocated to the special revenue funds, and they're carrying the brunt of that general liability insurance. Whereas in the past, it was allocated to the general fund. And so when looking at how AML JIA, we just wanted to compare, well, how do they allocate it? And she did a really nice spreadsheet that we'll share with council when we do the mid-year budget adjustment that really truly shows that the majority of that insurance does lie in the general fund. It's like $78,000 of it that is allocated according to AML JIA to general fund expenses. With that in mind, and knowing that the community assistance program funding this year was allocated through resolution to the general fund to help offset general liability insurance and public safety costs, but yet those insurance aren't in the general fund, we'll be recommending a little bit of a shift in how those funds are allocated, along with a few other things that she mentioned. And so that should be coming at the next council meeting. But I think it's gonna, just help tie in a few of those last minute things that really will make it shine, the budget shine. Senior meals grant, we're still waiting back to hear back. Jan already touched on that, so I won't go any further unless you have questions. Just continued projects for you guys to review are already things that we really touched on at the last meeting, but FY23 CAPSIS was submitted. Multi-purpose building, the crew is set to be over next week, and then over next week for each week until the end of February. So they'll be coming over all next month. Still working on funding for the SLU project, Raise grant funding, Susan Lake funding, Susan Lake access funding. I'm sorry, I apologize. FY22 audit, just want to keep this one in everybody's mind that that's going to be February 13th. So our office will be a little bit more busy at that time. And actually, we're going to be a little bit more busy leading up to the audit because the audit is being performed remotely. So there's a lot of test work that's going to be scanned and emailed and sent off in the couple of weeks leading up to the audit. So if you come in and we're frantically working with papers and trying to get them uploaded, that's what we're doing. AML Winter Conference, I haven't heard back if anybody else was interested for that time period of February 22nd and 24th. The mayor was not able to attend, nor do I think I will be able to this year, but I certainly think that this is something that we should keep on our radar going forward and annually every year, because it's a great time to get out and have a face-to-face and network with our legislators down in Juneau. FY24 budget work is beginning in conjunction with the mid-year adjustment, and we'll get a draft cycle schedule of that budget cycle to you at the next coming meeting. Still working on dam manual, and Seldovia's population determination for FY24 programs through the DCCED was increased to 261. I believe it was like 246 last year. So that's interesting that we're seeing an increase every year. We can, and you'll see that in here, we can, on the last page, we can put in a request for an adjustment if we don't think that that is correct. But I have found that to be an interesting number because it does seem like there has been some growth, but I haven't done the math. The city's received one applicant for the city clerk position, and we've heard interest from others, so we're holding on that. And an interview was held for the open senior meals position. We're still kind of holding on that one just to see about funding, but we anticipate being able to do a hire later this week. And SMOLT RFP advertising, I didn't include that in here, but we are actively working on using that grant for the SMOLT advertising and promotion of the fishery over here. And I attended a chamber meeting this month in discussion of that and how we can advertise through the chamber for that fishery. I did start a fishing in Seldovia webpage on the city webpage. So that's live. And Amelia Pollock reached out to me to also not partner, but to be included, to have that fishery be advertised and included as part of the human powered fishing derby, because that's their focus is on the Chinook salmon as well. So just really getting that word of mouth out there and starting to make those partnerships and relationships to help really spread the word. And that's what I have. Thank you. Oh, one last comment. I did make a note that the material, Safe Roads material came up in conversation during Jordan's report, and past staff did work on past maintenance staff did work on a Safe Roads inventory of the city's streets, and Jordan did follow up with that, trying to look at all of the streets in the city and rank them as priority of need for that material or any material or work that comes in the future. And we will have a public comment period for that here coming this spring, where we invite, once it's more finalized, the public to come in and see the city's evaluation of the streets and provide comment on whether that's acceptable or not. And that will be used as a baseline or guideline moving forward with the work that is done, being able to start with number one and just go down the list as we go. So we will have a little bit more of a public comment process when it comes to purchasing and using that material.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep, go ahead.
I have a question about the raised roads grant. Is that how you say it? I was wondering about the parking lot out in front of the kiosks, and that general area there is, it's pretty, looks like the Great Lakes, we'll say. I'm just wondering, is that something that could be included there, or?
I believe so. You're not the first person to mention that, and I think it should be included on the list as a priority. So we'll make sure to look into that.
Anyone else with any additional questions? Jennifer, your hand's up.
Yeah, the ferry, the supplemental ferry service, are they still looking for somebody to fill in this winter for the next month and a half?
Correct.
Okay, and then is it going to be a yearly thing? Is it just for this piece, or are they trying to make this a yearly thing for when the testy goes out, or what's the deal? It just seems funny that it's such a small, by the time they finish everything, well, never mind. It could be longer than a month. Maybe that's continuing with it. That's not a good.
Typically is.
But it would probably have to go back out again next year if they do it again next year, right?
Correct. So my understanding is that this is something that they have tried to do before. I'm not sure how long ago, but I think that's what the commissioner stated, is that they have issued RFPs in the past, but didn't receive any response. So the city is trying to help make sure that that word is out there, that this is happening, in case there is anybody that has interest in it, because they don't advertise very well for these RFPs that are issued on the state website. But they were wanting to work with the city of Seldovia to make sure that they were still maintaining or receiving service, even at a limited capacity. And this was part of it, is being able to issue that RFP. So we're sharing it. And then I believe that this current commissioner seems to really want to help and support our community and be able to maintain providing services, even when the ferries are in dry dock. So I have a feeling, though I can't say for sure, that if this was something that was successful, that they would be interested in doing it in the future as well.
Yeah, if I can add something to that, Heidi. Yeah, when we talked to the commissioner, it was, we kind of figured that it might not actually happen this year because of the timing. when we, it was just, it happened so quick that they weren't sure if they could get any interest generated. But I think too, on that note, don't really know if it's something that's going to happen regularly. I think they're looking at a whole bunch of stuff, like not having both ferries out at the same time for maintenance. That's been a big issue, and we really harped on them about that. So, like Heidi said, I think it's just, I have to be a little optimistic, and be kind of grateful that they were willing to listen and to do something, but whether it's actually going to happen or not this year, I don't know. So.
Okay, thank you, Bobby. Anyone else?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Yep, go ahead, Vivian.
Yeah, thank you, Heidi, for a good report. On the VPSO, do we happen to know from the organization that we're getting the VPSO through, do they have other candidates in case we don't find a chief of police that fits our criteria? Do they have other VPSOs that could be available to Seldovia, since how we were given the option of receiving 2 VPSOs? Do you know that information, Heidi?
Yes, so in speaking with Michael, he said that the program did have room to ask for additional budget for the next coming. So not in this budget, he's fitting Seldovia in with the budget he has right now. But
Okay.
if that's something that Seldovia wanted to pursue in the future, that he could ask for additional funding to be able to provide the community with 2 officers. However, while the city is interested in and continues to pursue a chief of police, that will not be something that we would be eligible for. So right now we get the 1 because we'll be supplementing or potentially supplementing with our own position, chief of police for the area. And they would not be able to provide a second or make that request budget wise. But should the city in the future decide that that's a program that they just want to utilize and not maintain their public safety officer, he seemed comfortable with pursuing funding. Just keep in mind that that needs to be in his fiscal year.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Heidi, I had one quick question on the application for the city manager, or excuse me, for the city clerk position. Is that posting, is that time sensitive, or is that open-ended right now? Is there a due date on that?
Nope, it's open-ended.
Okay, yeah, perfect. Okay, any last opportunity for questions before we wrap it up?
Mayor Campbell,
Yep, go ahead, John.
just one related to the ferry, maybe additional ferry service this winter. There's only a few people in this area capable of, transporting like that. Has anybody reached out to those? If the state's doing that, or, because I can think of 3 or 4 barges, and that's really all. it's even-
There's
as long as-
actually only one that transport passengers, vans, and cars. The other ones transport cars, no passengers. And then there's the smaller ones, that transport 1 or 2 cars. So they're reaching out to those folks.
Okay.
But like I said, the timing was the issue, because who knows, those boats might be working. So anyway.
Okay, great. All right, let's see, item O, informational items not requiring action. The city of Seldovia FY 22 audit is scheduled for the week of February 13th, as Heidi had said. Item P, executive session, none. Item Q, council and mayor comments concerning items not on the agenda. Peyton.
Congratulations to pending city manager. And thanks to staff for all the information and hard work. You guys are wonderful.
Thank you, Sweat.
Yeah, congratulations, Heidi, and thank you to the mayor and to Heidi for working out a contract that works for everyone.
Thank you, Rojas.
Yes, congratulations, Heidi. I'm really excited for you to work with us as our city manager. And thank the staff for all their hard work as always. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Vivian. Kennedy,
Have anything additional? Thank you.
thank you. Swick,
No comment.
okay, thank you. Yep, I'll say the same. Congratulations, Heidi. Welcome, welcome aboard again. So in your new position. Thanks for the staff for everything for this evening. The next meeting will be a regular meeting, which will be held on February 13th, 2023 at 6 p.m. And I fully expect that we'll start getting phone calls at some point here for some budgetary work sessions in the near future months. So hopefully we can try to get as much as we can and when the time comes into those meetings. And I'll go ahead and look for a motion to adjourn.
Make a
Motion
motion
to
to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any objection? All right, hearing none, we are adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time tonight.
Okay. Good night, everyone.
Okay, have a good evening, everyone.